Welcome to the second session in the basics of information systems and technology course. In this session, we are going to look at software development life cycle. It's an extremely important tool or a methodology which is used by software engineers to execute an IT project. So what is SDLC? It's a systematic approach to building software systems. It encompasses all key stages and activities required to build an IT system from scratch. It's a 7-stage model. The stages vary according to various frameworks, but the activities remain more or less the same. Its usage, so it is typically used in implementing complex digitization process. Okay, for example, let's say if your school wanted to digitize its operations, so there are what are the different operations or processes in a school? Okay, right from how your attendance is scored to how the classes are conducted, what is the schedule of your classes, okay, what is the syllabus, how and when tests are given, how are the scores communicated to you and your parents. So these are different processes. If a school were to build an IT system which automates all these processes, it will have to use this software development lifecycle process. The IT company which is implementing this project will have to use the SDLC. Okay, I will explain this example later on in the slides. And its limitations are, it is not suitable for projects or products which require frequent changes. For example, apps. Okay, all these apps which you have on your mobile phone, you will see that they require typical updates. So you will get a notification that update your app. So these apps kind of projects cannot be executed using SDLC. So these are the 7 stages of SDLC. First is requirement gathering, then analysis, design, coding, testing, deployment and maintenance. So the first stage, which is requirements gathering, is typically done by business analyst. So it is basically requirements gathering means understanding the requirements of the client. What are the business requirements? So the business analyst will sit with the client, understand the client's business, understand the different processes in the business, and he will document them. So this is called requirement gathering. The next stage is analysis and design. These two steps are typically done in collaboration by the business analyst and the project manager. Okay, so what happens here is basically translate the business requirement into technical requirements. The project manager will look at the scope of the project. He will decide how much time it will take, etc. He will create a project plan. We'll look at the different activities in each of these stages in later slides. And the final 4 stages, which is coding, testing, deployment and maintenance, they are done by software engineers or senior software engineers, which we saw in the first session, the hierarchy of different roles. So these are the 7 stages of SDLC. Now we will go into details of each of these stages. Okay, so requirements gathering. Requirement gathering, which is the first step, it means understand the client requirements and finalize project scope. So the business analyst will talk to the client, understand the client's business, understand his requirements, and he will finalize the project scope, saying that okay, if this is your business and these are the activities or these are the processes in your business that you want to digitize. So that's what you mean by finalizing project scope. The second stage is analysis. So translate business requirements into technical requirements, resource estimation. So the project manager and the business analyst will together decide how much time this project is going to take and how many people are required to estimate to execute this project. So this is what you mean by time and manpower. And pricing. So accordingly, depending on the time that it is going to take to execute the process and depending on the number of people which are required to execute the project, they will arrive at a price, and then they will communicate this price to the client, saying that okay, you want to build this system, this is the cost. And if the client agrees, then there is a lot of negotiation which happens between the client and the business analyst, but it is all done basis on the requirements gathering and analysis phase. Okay, so once the project is approved, you move on to the design stage, which is the third stage. So in design stage, you define inputs, outputs and process or logic. So input is basically what are the information that we are going to receive from the client. Okay, output is basically how the system should look like. So if you are building a website, how should be the look and feel of the website? What are the functionalities which are required in the website? And algorithms and process or logic or algorithm. Algorithm is basically a graphical representation of how data is going to flow at the back end of a website. So what logics or what process is going to go into that data. Okay, so for example, let's say you are building a website like Amazon. Okay, in Amazon, if somebody buys a product, the algorithm should look like something like, okay, how many number of products that the person has brought into price for each product. That will be the final bill value, right? So let's say if you are buying a notebook, okay, which is priced at 50 rupees per notebook, and you bought 10 of these notebooks, so the final bill price should be 50 into 10, which is 500. So this is the logic which is used to arrive at the final bill value to the customer. Now this logic is basically called as algorithm. Okay, the next step in design is systems design. So DBMS architecture. So all this data, DBMS is basically database management system. It's a highly complicated topic, so we are not going to go into depth, but just understand that whatever activities that you do on a website, they are stored in a database. So if you log into Amazon, it will show you your past orders. How many orders have you placed with Amazon before? Okay, as it goes as back as 2 years, 3 years. So all this data is stored in a system called as database management system. So when building a website or a software, you also have to design the DBMS. Then hardware specifications, network requirements. So these are the system design topics. Then project plan preparation. So in the design phase, you prepare the project plan, the entire project plan. Milestones are basically interim deliverables, right? So for example, the analogy to this is, let's say you have a history course. Okay, that history course is the entire project, and milestones are basically individual chapters in that history textbook. So if you have 10 chapters, each of these chapters is like a milestone. Timelines, resources and modules. So timelines are basically when are we going to finish each of these individual milestones. Next step is coding. So this is done by software engineers. So writing code in programming language for individual modules, and documentation, which we saw what documentation means in the previous session. Then testing. So what happens is a project is broken down into different modules, and these modules have to be tested individually and checking for logic and processing errors. So logic, as I said in the Amazon example, let's say you bought 10 books and the 10 notebooks, and the price for each notebook was 50. Okay, so but instead of multiplying it by 10 by mistake, the programmer who was writing that code multiplied it by 9. So the final bill value will come as 450. Okay, but the number of notebooks which you bought was 10. So the customer will be billed only for 450 while he should be billed for 500. So this is a logic error, or you can say a programming error. So these likewise there can be many errors in a project. So these errors are caught at testing phase. And user acceptance testing. User acceptance testing is basically once a system is ready, the IT company will give you a dummy login to the user. Or some access to the user, final user, to see if the system which is being designed is as per the specifications or not. The next step is deployment. So basically all this coding happens at the IT company's offices. So once this coding is complete, once this testing is complete, that code which is in the form of programming languages has to be transferred from the IT company's computers to the client computer. So that is called as deployment. And hardware also. So if there is a hardware requirements, so we'll look at what these requirements are in the example which I am going to explain later on. And testing the integration of the design IT system with other system at the client location. So there can be multiple IT systems at a client's place. Okay, so so let's say you are an IT company. So likewise, there are 10 other IT companies who might be working on different systems at the client for the client's business. So once your system is ready, you also have to test if the software which you are designed is working well with the other softwares which are being developed by other companies. So that is done at the deployment stage. And finally, maintenance. So basically, once you finish a project, you also have a maintenance phase in which once the client starts using that software, if there are any problems, the IT company will fix those problems in a limited period of time. So maintenance are typically two types of maintenance: proprietary maintenance and third party maintenance. Proprietary maintenance means the company which developed the software, that company itself will do all the maintenance. So any user issues after deployment, designing new user interfaces as per requirement, etc. And then there is third party maintenance. Is basically means the software was written by some other company, and some other company is providing maintenance to that software. So this is very limited. limited in scope. So it may involve some new coding based on the core system design, but scope is limited and it's mostly a support function. So let's look at how SDLC will be used to design a school management system. Okay, so requirement gathering phase, the business analyst will understand client requirements. So the various processes in schools such as attendance recording, class schedules, professors timings, homeworks, test administration and scores, these are the major processes which are going on in a school. So analysis, so based on number of processes identified, the business analyst will determine project duration, number of team members, hardware needed. For example, if you want to automate the attendance gathering process at your school, I don't know, right now you may be just raising your hands as the teacher calls your name and the teacher manually writes it down in a notebook. But if you want to automate it, you will have to fingerprint sensors in the classroom. So as you walk into the classroom, you record your fingerprint, and that software automatically records your attendance. So these are the hardware needs. Then estimate project cost and submit a proposal to the school. So based on all these parameters, the business analyst and project manager will come up with a pricing estimate, and they will submit it to the school. Once the school agrees, the project moves into the design phase. In the design phase, to break down the processes into modules. So attendance, there might be one module which is looking after attendance recording. There might be one module which is looking after homework. There might be another module which is looking at test administration. So define output, for example, report formats for attendance records, how the attendance record should be displayed into the system, how the test results should be stored, etc. and algorithms, as I mentioned, define the logic for the system. So coding happens, then testing. So testing may test individual modules and their interaction with each other. For example, test both homework and tests modules and their integration into the final scores report module. So the final grade that you get in a particular subject might be dependent on both your performance on the homework and the final test. So the results of both the final tests and your grades on various homework assignments that are given to you have to be considered into the final test results. So this is what testing is. Then another important activity in this testing is once the system is ready, the IT company will give dummy logins for a few school employees. So there might be dummy logins which are given to your teachers, 1 or 2 teachers, who will see if the attendance is being recorded properly or not, or the test scores are getting generated properly or not. So this is the testing phase, and once the testing phase is over, there is a deployment. So far all the code was at the IT company's offices. So what they will do is they will put this code on a CDs or hard drives, and then they will come to your school and they will transfer this code from these CDs or hard drives into your school's computers. And then they will install necessary hardware such as fingerprint sensors, fingerprint scanners, or the servers, etc. At your school. And the final phase is maintenance. So basis your contract with the IT company. So once the system is operational, there might be other problems. Whatever problems come up, for example, some fingerprint sensor might not work properly, okay, or at times the test scores which are being generated may not match properly, or let's assume that the school wants to come up with a new process. Okay, for example, it says that earlier the tests had maybe 10 questions. Now they want to increase the number of questions to 15 questions instead of 10 questions. So the existing system may not have provision for including 10 questions. So the school will call the project manager and say that why don't you change the test module, instead of 10 questions we want to include 15 questions now. So these are all the activities that can come in the maintenance phase. So this was an overview of SDLC, which is an extremely important tool that IT companies use to execute projects which are highly complicated in nature. I hope you understood all the major steps in an SDLC and their significance. In the later sessions, we'll look at another module which is used by IT companies, which is called Agile model. Thanks.